Okay, I honestly don't like this drop shadow, so I'm gonna modify it some more. I'm actually going to click on it, bring open the filter, and I want to play a little bit with it. I think I'm actually going to decrease the distance a little bit so it looks more, what I want it to look like, I want it to look like maybe a little bit less spread and play up the opacity a little bit. Alright, what that's going to do is that's going to give the sense that we're dealing with a shadow behind the object. Okay, actually I really don't like the spread at all. Um, That looks a little bit more like what I was going for. So yeah, okay. And I'm going to do the same thing with this young lady here. I'm going to click on her layer. I've already done the transform. It's something I did when I wasn't watching transform. I'm going to do my rotate. My perspective transform. So I scale it in a little bit. I also can do another transform. Again, you're expected to play with these. I'm going to say let's rotate this guy so it looks like she's kind of floating off into space. All right. Then I want to add another layer to her, so I go, whoops, I have to click on the arrow to apply that transform. Click on this, and I'm going to add a drop shadow to it. Alright, and if you notice it's a very small drop shadow. I want it to go a little bit further away, so I'm going to double click, give it a little bit more distance, and maybe change the direction of the shadow a little bit so it looks like it's going behind it. Alright, and just say OK. Alright, so I have a couple drop shadows here. Now, the final thing I want you guys to do, and again, you're going to do this for every member of the class, is want to put in names. Now, I made the mistake of not picking people whose names I know, which is kind of silly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just type in text, and I'm going to call this guy Mike. Now, that's about as boring as you can possibly get. One thing I am going to try to do is make the text size a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it, say, a 48-point font, and that looks kind of cool. But what I also want to do is I say, I want to give this a little bit more fanciness. So I've got this text layer. I'm going to highlight it, and let's play with the color a little bit. Let's make that text more of like a vibrant blue. Okay. Oops. Oh, it's still showing as gray. How interesting. Okay, I clearly am doing something wrong. All right, let's try it again. Let's see if I can get it to do my vibrant blue thing. And hopefully that worked that time. Yep, there it goes. And I'm also going to apply some filters. Now in this case, I'm going to select the text. And the filter I'm going to do is, whoops, I'm going to click over here. I'm going to make a layer effect, and I'm going to make it a bevel. And I'm going to say OK and see what that does. And it doesn't really show too well. If you were to zoom in a little bit, you'd be able to see that it now has kind of a shine to it like this. Alright, so that's kind of cool. I might want to do some other things with it. Another thing that's actually very useful to do, view, fit, and window, is to actually perhaps take the whole thing, select. And this is something I like to do is, oops, seem to be having a problem with good old Mike here. Let's try one more time. Is if I want this to show up a little bit better, what I can do is I can also put in addition to bevel and emboss, I can also put in a drop shadow and maybe make that drop shadow a little further away. Give it a little bit more of a distance to the drop shadow. So let's open it up and let's make the distance a little bit greater so that it shows up, and maybe have it go off to the side a little bit more too. Okay. So those are a couple things that you can do. They're very, very cool. I want you guys to spend the most of this time to be playing with the different effects. Drop shadow, let's bevel and emboss. Let's see what else we can do. Maybe we can make it a little bit higher, the emboss. Play with this and just see what you come up with. All right, that's what I want you guys to do. One thing that you may find is that maybe this font doesn't work very well, but maybe it's a lot more interesting if you use something different. One of my personal favorite weird fonts is something called Chiller. Okay, that's one that I like to use. You guys can play with whatever ones you like. All right. That Chiller is hard to read. It's small. I may want, if I'm going to use Chiller, let's go up to like a 72-point font. All right. And if we go view actual size, so it does kind of have an interesting look to it with the thing floating. The idea is to play with these and see if you can kind of create do some work with filters, do some work with fonts, drop shadows, all of those different things to see what you come up with. All right, that's the end of this tutorial, and that's basically the assignment. One picture of each of you with your name.